Chag Sameach. The best part about being a rabbi, a cantor, is the invitation that you give us to share in your joys and your sorrows, your life cycle events, your moments of transition. It's a sacred privilege for which we as a clergy team are profoundly grateful. And while we hope that we're able to help strengthen your connection to God, Torah, and Israel, I can't tell you how many times I'm the one who walks away from our time together with a newfound appreciation for Judaism because of something you did or something you said that changes me forever. A brilliant young woman has reached the final stage of her conversion process. I'm sitting with two other rabbis comprising the Beit Din, the rabbinic court, interviewing her about her Jewish journey. Should all go well, should she demonstrate the deep learning she's done over the course of at least 1 year of study together, her commitment to living a Jewish life, her willful desire to cast her lot with the Jewish people, then we leave the room and she immerses in the mikveh, officially joining our people. What's one Jewish holiday that really resonates with you and why? I ask. Pesach, she says. Why? I ask. She explains how she grew up in a fundamentalist Christian household where questions were discouraged, seen as, at the worst, heretical, or at the best, irrelevant in matters of faith. When she began immersing herself in Jewish text, she fell in love with the Jewish emphasis not on finding the right answers, but on asking the right questions. Then she began to get emotional. Passover resonates with me, she says, because when I read the Haggadah, I realize that I'm the child who doesn't know how to ask. In that moment, I stand up and say, she's in. The other rabbis say, we're rabbis, we want to ask her questions. I say, no questions, she's in the club. I walked away from that experience with a newfound appreciation for having grown up in a Jewish community, in a Jewish household that always encouraged my questions, for a Talmud that teaches us how to sharpen them and implores us to never stop asking, for a Torah that gives us Abraham, who, when God is going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, says, would you wipe away the good with the wicked? Shall not the judge of all the earth judge justly? Far be it from you. That gives us Moses. When God says that God is so angry with the people that God's going to wipe us out, Moses asks, what will the other nations think? That you weren't strong enough to make good on your promise to bring us to Israel. If you act such, then wipe me, blot me out from your book. Fundamentalists don't brook questions, but the God of Israel invites them, wants them for our own growth. Torah, Talmud, Jewish learning is an endless sea, a pool in which we immerse ourselves like a mikveh. The deeper we go, the more we find, but only if our environment holds us, supports us like the gentle waters, nurtures our curiosity, and helps quench our thirst for meaning and purpose through the ancient wisdom of our tradition. Our Haggadah introduces us to 4 children. The wise one says, what are the testimonies, the statutes, and laws that the Lord our God commanded you? He wants to understand. The wicked one says, what is this service to you? To you, he says, not to him. When he sets himself apart from the community, he denies the very core of our beliefs, we read in the Haggadah. Because of this, the Lord acted for me when I came out of Egypt, for me and not for him. Had he been there, he would not have been redeemed. The simple one says, what is this? We step back so he can see the big picture. With a strong hand, the Lord brought us out of Egypt from the grip of slavery. And then there's the one who doesn't know how to ask. V'she'eno yodea lish'ol, at patach lo, shene'emar, v'higarata levincha bayom hahu lemor, ba'avur zeh asa Adonai li b'tzeiti miMisraim. You must open the story for him, As it is said, "And you shall tell your child on that day, because of this the Lord acted for me when I came out of Egypt." My teacher, Rabbi Ed Feinstein, has an interesting take on the child who doesn't know how to ask. He writes, "What Jewish kid doesn't have at least one question? He doesn't even ask, 'When do we eat?' He just sits there in silence. Who is he? It's not that he's inarticulate or mute. He can talk. He's just given up on us. His is the silence of resignation. He was yesterday's Rasha, the wicked child. Yesterday, he took the risk of asking the question of meaning, and he found himself castigated, scolded. So he learned the lesson, and he shuts up and sits silently, because he believes that we have nothing to offer him, that we have no sense of life's meaning, no direction towards life's purposes." My parents are here, joining us for the Seders after the recent loss of my grandmother, my father's mother. My grandmother was possessed of a sensitivity toward people, and I've always thought that it was this sensitivity that made her such a good storyteller. My father inherited that, and as a brilliant writer and storyteller, he's taught me everything I know about how to write compelling characters. For one, we have to be curious about how people get to be the way that they are. What experiences shape their points of view to be a certain way? And second, behavior, action. Given a choice, what do our characters choose to do? And that's not just about big existential choices. Audiences fall in love with characters for the little quirks and phrases that make them unique. The Haggadah, the Exodus, our greatest story, gives us 4 distinct characters who all behave differently from one another, who have their little quirks and speak in ways that make them unique. We're meant to be curious about them. How did the one who doesn't know how to ask get to be that way? Was she always that way? What if she used to ask questions, but she was shunned for them and made to feel wicked? Instead of quenching her thirst with life-sustaining waters of Torah, what if we failed her and left her thirsting for meaning? So she had to separate herself from the community and find that meaning elsewhere. Rabbi Feinstein argues that yesterday's wicked child is today's child who doesn't know how to ask, who doesn't know how to ask anymore, because he no longer believes he can find water in our tradition. And that's a tragedy, because Judaism is a wellspring. It's a mikveh. When the Israelites are thirsty in the desert, they ask Moses for water. Instead of encouraging the people and holding their pain, he allows his anger to overcome him. "Listen, you rebels," Moses says. "Shall we get water for you out of this rock?" And Moses raised his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod. Out came copious water. God doesn't punish Moses because he struck a rock. God punishes Moses because he yells at the people. Notice he labels them the wicked child. When God told Moses, "Ask the rock, speak to it, and give them water to drink." It's Seder time. And while we so look forward to family around the table, we also know that whether it's Thanksgiving or Pesach, intergenerational family around the table often means distinct characters with distinct points of view and difficult questions. Difficult questions about Israel, about America. And we may feel the urge to yell some things and smack our hands against the table twice. But if we want to make it to the promised land, we have to encourage their questions. And we have to be curious ourselves as to how it is that we're arriving at our very different points of view. Most importantly, we have to show them that our tradition, which is ancient and solid as a rock, is a wellspring of copious water, if only we have the fortitude and patience to engage in dialogue. The rabbis say, "You must open the story for him. As it is said, 'And you shall tell your child on that day, because of this the Lord acted for me when I came out of Egypt.'" But how do we open the story for him, for her? How do we open the story for them? How do we tell our story in a way that speaks to the souls of our children and grandchildren who are thirsting for meaning and purpose? so that they don't resign themselves to silence at our table and search for meaning and purpose elsewhere, in the encampments we saw on college campuses across our country. Maybe that's the fifth question we ask ourselves this year. Haggadah means the telling of the story, but how do we tell our story? How do we open it for them? Well, there are two crucial elements to the Exodus story. One, we were slaves in Egypt to Pharaoh, who oppressed us and degraded us. We were victimized, thrown into the Nile, treated as subhuman chattel as the world looked on with cool indifference, endorsement even. You can't understand the character of the Jewish people if you don't understand our backstory, our current story, continuing to unfold in the wake of October 7th. How can we celebrate freedom when our hostages are still not free, aren't home like they should be at their family Seder tables? One needs to understand this and how it shapes our people's unique point of view. We're a people of living memory, a people for whom history is alive when we say again and again, never forget. But there's a second element to the Exodus story, which is, with a mighty hand and outstretched arm, God redeemed us from Egypt. Why does God redeem us? What's the meaning of it all? What's our Jewish purpose in this deeply broken world? Rabbi and philosopher David Hartman, who founded the Shalom Hartman Institute, wrote a famous article in 1982 during the Lebanon War called Auschwitz or Sinai. In it, he outlines two different models by which we orient ourselves as a people. Both are inextricable elements of who we are that must be taught and thoroughly understood. But if we only orient ourselves towards one, if we have to choose one core narrative of our people, he makes the controversial argument that it can't be Auschwitz. It has to be Sinai. Hartman writes, "It is a serious mistake to allow the trauma of Jewish suffering to be the exclusive frame of reference for understanding our national renaissance. Israel is not only a response to modern anti-Semitism, but is above all a modern expression of the eternal Sinai covenant that has shaped Jewish consciousness throughout the millennia. It was not Hitler who brought us back to Zion, but rather belief in the eternal validity of the Sinai covenant. It is dangerous to our growth as a healthy people if the memory of Auschwitz becomes a substitute for Sinai." Mitzrayim, Egypt, means the narrow place. After October 7th, no one can blame us for seeing our story through the lens of the narrow place. No one can blame us for allowing the trauma of Jewish suffering to be the exclusive frame of reference for understanding our national renaissance. But we may need to look elsewhere for the aspect of our story that speaks to the souls of our children and grandchildren. For that, we have to look towards Sinai, which is what Pesach is all about. Hartman writes, "The model of Sinai awakens the Jewish people to the awesome responsibility of becoming a holy people. At Sinai, we discover the absolute demand of God. We discover who we are by what we do. Sinai calls us to action, our moral awakening, to living constantly with challenges of building a moral and just society which mirrors the kingdom of God in history. Sinai creates humility and openness to the demands of self-transcendence." I think that Hartman is saying exactly what our rabbis say when they tell us how to speak to the child who doesn't know how to ask. "And you shall tell your child on that day, because of this, the Lord acted for me when I came out of Egypt." Egypt, Auschwitz, October 7th. You cannot know the Jewish character if you do not know our suffering. But when we talk to Holocaust survivors, to Holocaust heroes, which is all the more important as there are fewer and fewer of them still around to tell their stories, we quickly learn that victim is not our character. Egypt isn't who we are. Auschwitz isn't who we are. Sinai is. The heroic acts we take that move us closer to redemption, our actions, that's what determines our character. The structure of the Haggadah is Matchil beganut v'sayem b'shevach. We begin with degradation, but we end with praise. Hartman continues, because of Sinai, Jewish suffering did not create self-pity, but moral sensitivity. And you shall love the stranger because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Auschwitz, like all Jewish suffering of the past, must be absorbed and understood within the framework of Sinai. We will mourn forever because of the memory of Auschwitz. We will build a healthy new society because of the memory of Sinai. To end once more with the words of Rabbi Feinstein, the opposite of Judaism isn't Christianity or Islam or even atheism. The opposite of Judaism is to say, I give up. What is what is meant to be and can't be fixed. That's our only heresy. The opposite of Judaism is moral surrender and despair. The opposite of Judaism is to wrap yourselves in your privatism and say, I don't hear, I don't see, I don't care. Because when you give up on the world, you also give up on yourself. Judaism is designed to give you a life of meaning, of purpose, of importance. And practiced carefully, it does that exceedingly well. That's the meaning of life. In response to the silent resignation of the one who doesn't know how to act, give them the meaning of life. This young woman chose to swim in the waters of Judaism and Torah because she knew that her questions would be honored here and that she would be supported. That's what sets us apart. That's why we ask, Ma nishtana? I imagine her as the youngest new member at our table, proudly standing this year and asking, knowing she'll be answered, Ma nishtana halayla hazeh? What makes this night, what makes us different? Chag Sameach.